In today's lesson, we're going to be talking all about dragon fruit, growing them, caring for them, learning about the nutritional facts, how delicious they in fact taste. With me today, I've got Richard Lee of Grafting Dragon Fruit YouTube. He is the king of dragon fruit, and we are going to learn a lot about growing them in today's lesson, from pollination, whether or not cross-pollination is even required, to potting them, fertilizing them, pest control, and so much more. Thank you so much for joining me in the Los Angeles home garden and visiting us all the way up from Orange County.
Thank you, Charles, for inviting me here, inviting me over to your garden. I'm super excited to talk about dragon fruit, show and help everybody learn a little bit more about dragon fruit. So that way, hopefully, if you guys wanted to, it's very obtainable, very realistic to grow these in your garden, in your home, even if you have no space at all. Real estate is not needed for these fruits, and if you want to grow something mythical, magical, and really wow your friends, these are the plants you would want to go towards too in the future if you want to grow some delicious dragon fruits.
That's awesome. Well, let's get started. So Richard Lee has been growing dragon fruit for many years. He's dedicated over 90% of his real estate on his property to growing dragon fruit, and you can follow him in his journey on YouTube for it's been about 1.5 years only, and he's already accumulated over 6 million views on his Grafting Dragon Fruit YouTube channel. I'm going to be putting that link down below in the comments as well as in the video description below, and be sure to check that out and subscribe and follow him to follow that journey, as followers and subscribers from all around the world have already done so. He's already accumulated close to 43,000 subscribers, like something that's unimaginable for a lot of us on YouTube in such a very short and brief period of time. And I'm so excited for having, again, the king of dragon fruits here on our property that's going to teach us a lot about growing and caring and incorporating dragon fruit on your property, even if you don't have real estate. So even if you're in an apartment or a condominium and you've only got a balcony, you can enjoy these very expensive. And that's another reason for incorporating dragon fruit, aside from the nutritional benefits of having healthy, homegrown, picked fruit on your property. And that's what we're going to be doing right now. So let's get started with talking about the nutrition.
So dragon fruit have stuff like antioxidants, high in fiber, anti-aging oxidants. What else can you add to that, Charles?
So a lot of research out there will basically read that dragon fruit is a relatively low-calorie fruit that is high in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, anti-aging, anti-cancer, beneficial plant compounds. So a lot of value, and the reason with the low calorie is that the sugar content is quite low. And I know when we visited Edgar Valdivia, which is where I collected one of our dragon fruit specimens here, Edgar Valdivia said, for a lot of people that are diabetic and can't handle high sugar contents that you might find like in cherries, for example, dragon fruit is the exact opposite spectrum with a lower sugar content, and is sometimes confused. I pulled up, this article that I found on YouTube with Rachel Ray, and she invited Dr. Oz on the show, and they basically did a taste test of what do dragon fruits taste like. And on the show, Rachel Ray describes it as being a weak kiwi flavor, and then Dr. Oz, said in his opinion, dragon fruit tastes like the cauliflower of fruit. And I know when I first tasted dragon fruit, I'm like, okay, it's good, not amazing. And I know that the fresher you pick it and the more firm you get to enjoy it, and the more nutrient dense because it was picked that day, right, the better the taste. But the stuff that's being sold in the market, and I've learned this from growing fruits here on my property for years, the stuff you pick at home is always going to be superior in flavor than the stuff that's at the grocery store that's been sitting there for at least 2 weeks, right, dying, if not longer.
Yeah. And a lot of that just, you're getting these dragon fruits, they're from different countries, versus if you're buying them locally homegrown here, you're gonna get a better tasting fruit. If you're gonna be buying white dragon fruit, majority of those are coming from Vietnam, and I'm talking about the red skin with the white flesh in them. Okay. And just like Charles was explaining to me, these people that tried these varieties, and I'm not gonna debunk that, they do kind of don't have a lot of flavor. It reminds me of kind of like a kiwi with just less zest, not a lot of sugar, but the textures is really good. It's a really interesting fruit to see, and once you try it, it's just very different. But if you were versus to grow them at home, you can finally let them fully ripe you know, you get to see them picked at the right time versus 2 weeks early. And sometimes they're picking them green, but even after you pick a dragon fruit green and you leave them outside for some time, their skin does turn red, but the internals, they don't change in flavor, sweetness. That all happens when they're ripening on the vine. And once you get a really ripe dragon fruit, it will change your mind of what you think about how dragon fruit tastes.
So true. The other thing, and another reason I'm so excited about having Richard with us today is, and I'll agree with also Rachel Ray when she says it's a weak kiwi flavor, but, and as Richard said, being fresh picked that day and enjoying it is a completely different experience than being the store-bought. But one other thing I learned recently was I got my hand on a yellow, what's described as a yellow dragon fruit, and when you try one of those, the sugar content is off the chart, and I would say it's now comparable not to a weak kiwi, but a sweet mango in regards to, like, you know, explosively sweet and delicious and you know, tantalizing in every way, both in the sweetness and also the tartness that a dragon fruit can offer. It's got explosive fruit flavor and high sugar content, and being that, you know, I'm looking for something that, you know, meets my palate, I wanted something that had that sugar content, and I wanted to, you know, basically grow that all over my real estate as well. So I'm excited to have you here, and I know you brought some of those varieties that we're going to talk about shortly in regards to, you know, getting the sweetest, if that's the goal, the sweetest variety of dragon fruit on your property, and that's what we're going to be doing next. The next topic I want to share with you is in regards to propagating dragon fruit. What are the best ways of propagating, getting dragon fruit onto your real estate?
I mean, there are many ways to propagate dragon fruit. I can list you about 5 ways to do it, but the main way people have been, and what I recommend you to do, is just stick it in soil. You know, you want to just get rid of anything that is hard for you to do and just make it easier on yourself, so that way it's more attractive for you to go out there and actually want to go plant these dragon fruit cuttings. So all you can do is, you know, take them, dry them, let them callus out. So when you're doing a fresh stem cut, they're a little wet. You don't want anything wet in soil right away, because if you leave them in there, they're going to start to rot, and then it's just going to compromise your whole cutting. Okay. So 1 to 2 days would be perfect, and then you just stick it in soil. That's one way. You did talk to me about air laying, propagation from seeds.
So general propagation ways, yeah, one would be, you know, that you basically cut your dragon fruit in half. All of those black seeds are seeds. And I know when visiting Edgar Valdivia, for example, on his property, and I'm sure you're doing the same on your own, is you'll sometimes plant the seeds. Yeah. For example, if you got an American Beauty dragon fruit, if I take the seeds of an American Beauty and plant them, will I end up with more American Beauty dragon fruit?
You will get a variation of American Beauty dragon fruit, because when you're planting the seeds, it's not true to the clone anymore, and now you're creating something almost new.
Okay, so it's not identical is the point.
Right.
So the seeds, just like our children, are not identical to the parents. It would be a cross of whatever it was that pollinated that dragon fruit.
Exactly.
So if you want more American Beauty variety dragon fruit, the best way to get more of it, in your opinion, is how?
It's just find someone with an established plant, taste their fruit to make sure it tastes good before you get this cutting, because it would suck if you're waiting a whole year, you're planting this cutting, and then it doesn't taste good. So once you get those out of the way, you just grab a cutting like this, you snip them off the branch, stick it into soil, and about a year is when you should be expected to see some fruits happening. Okay,
so planting seeds, again, just to cover this, planting seeds is going to give you a variation. Maybe it'll be similar, maybe it'll be better, but it will not be identical to the flavor of the fruit that you just enjoyed.
Right.
That's one. To get an exact identical flavor, the best way is by way of cutting, according to, you know, what Richard just shared with us. Another way of propagating, just in general with plants, is a method known as air layering. But I know Richard and I talked a little bit before this, and he said air layering is not prevalent, as it's very, I guess, time consuming.
Time consuming, and you know, these dragon fruits, you'd be surprised, they don't die easily. You can leave them in shade or even in sun for a month, and they would just start to slowly lose the water retention that's inside them. Okay. But you will start seeing roots grow out at the end of the base without soil, without water, in their most horrible state.
So they'll do their everything to grow.
Just to try to survive and repopulate themselves.
And I love the fact that, I know that when we talked earlier, you said on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy is it to grow dragon fruit compared to other fruit trees?
Right, and a 1.
Yeah.
Literally, they will grow on their own without you having to do anything. They might not taste the best, they might not look aesthetically as pleasing as you like, but they will grow without any help, especially if you have a self-fertile one. And we're gonna go into that a little bit more. There's some self-sterile, self-fertile types that easier to get fruit, and some that's gonna require human, pollination to get your fruits that you're gonna try to get.
So we just talked about propagating dragon fruit by way of seed, by cutting, by air layering, which you don't recommend. And then the last one, and the name of your YouTube channel is called Grafting Dragon Fruit. So grafting is another way of propagating dragon fruit. And when would you use grafting as a technique?
I'm glad you asked that, Charles, because this was the main reason I got into dragon fruit, was because there were so many varieties of dragon fruit out there. I'm talking about hundreds. And the only one I was able to find are the ones in the market, the red skin with the white flesh. And then came along this yellow dragon fruit that's super sweet, and if you're biting into it, it's just like juices of honey all over your palate. Really refreshing, really good. Changed the game in dragon fruit. So grafting allowed me to take this dragon fruit that is not available here in the United States. There was a little green piece on it that was the stem that was still viable, and I took that and grafted it to make an identical clone of that fruit. So when I say identical clone, meaning now that little piece that I grafted, just a little bud, it grew to a new branch, and now I have that variety that they only have in Ecuador, Flora, And another reason to graft is, let's say dragon fruits growing from a seed can take 5 to 7 years to grow, versus a cutting, it only takes you 1 year to produce fruit. So grafting will now help speed that process of that dragon fruit seeding to mature quicker, and then have fruits within 1.5 years or even sooner.
So I just want to repeat that the 2 main points that you shared in regards to reasons for grafting dragon fruit. One being, and I saw that YouTube video as well, and we've actually got that variety because of your success in grafting. He picked up a yellow dragon fruit from the store, and on the yellow dragon fruit, and I'm going to show this image as well here on the screen, there was a piece of green stem attached to the fruit. So when the harvesters picked it, they actually pulled a little bit of the plant with the fruit.
Right.
And Richard happened to take a piece of that stem, grafted onto an already established dragon fruit variety that was growing on his property, and all of a sudden it was pushing out stems and branches, off this dragon fruit rootstock, and then creating so much additional plant that he was able to share some with us, which we're going to discuss in a moment. So again, you can take just a small sampling off of like a tissue culture, or they call it like scion wood, off of the desired flavor that you want, and then bring that on your property and then enjoy that much faster.
Yeah.
And the second one being, you said, is seedlings. If you plant a seedling and you want to experiment with flavors to see what varieties you get, you said it can take up to 5 years for those to flower and eventually support fruit.
Yeah.
Whereas grafting, you can save 4 years and enjoy fruit in as little as 1 year from the time of successful graft.
That's correct.
So for any of you that saw, the Dr. Oz, Rachel Ray, being a weak kiwi flavor, that there are, as you also said, many, I don't know if it's in the hundreds or thousands of varieties of dragon fruit, and that was just a representation of one, and maybe one of the most common ones being, what would you say is the most prevalent, most widely just, sold variety of dragon fruit out there?
So the ones that you're always going to be seeing in the market is called the Vietnam Whites, and that's the one with the red skin, green fins, and the white flesh. So not a lot of flavor, but they're starting to have competition now with the yellow dragon fruit that's starting to go around in the market.
Yeah.
And that one, flavor packed, really sweet. Like I said, you take a bite, it's like crunch of honey inside your mouth.
And that's what got me hooked. I mean, I always liked dragon fruit, but now I love it, and we're going to be, again, propagating and incorporating more dragon fruit into our real estate, hoping you do the same as well. The next thing I want to get into is pollination. I've got a variety of fruit trees here on my property, from citrus to peaches and plums and apples, pomegranates and so forth. And I want to know, when it comes to dragon fruit, do I need more than one? I know, for example, when it comes to avocados, avocados are generally, for the most part, self-fruitful, but if you have a type A and a type B variety, you can increase production by 5 or 10%. When it comes to dragon fruit, can you tell us more about, pollination, and what are the pollination requirements to successfully have fruiting dragon fruit on your property?
Yeah, definitely. So this is where knowing where you get your dragon fruit cuttings from a reliable source, or, not just from Craigslist or, the big box store, eBay. You're going to be getting something that they're just going to name, something that's popular going around just to get your money. My recommendation is find a hobbyist, find a backyard grower that, you know, love dragon fruit, and like I said, try their dragon fruit before you guys, if you're not sure. There are so many varieties out there. Like Charles was saying, there's hundreds. I know there's hundreds out there because I've collected almost a percentage of that. Pollination varies between varieties. So if you know what variety you have, like let's say American Beauty, very popular self-fertile variety, does not need any other variety to pollinate it with and will set fruit on its own.
Great.
Versus if we're talking about another popular variety called Physical Graffiti, it's just a hybrid that is self-sterile. And when we're saying self-sterile, it means a dragon fruit flower has the anatomy to produce pollen and has its ovary system to have it induce fruit. And that Physical Graffiti variety won't use its own pollen. Even if a bee comes in there and pollinate with its own pollen, it won't set fruit.
Yep.
It requires cross-pollination. So for an example, Charles has some really good one with apples.
Correct. So with apples, the example is the Honeycrisp apple. Apple is one variety of apple that if you've got a Honeycrisp apple on your property and there's no other apple varieties, and I'm not talking about another apple crisp, but a Red Delicious or a Granny Smith, a different variety of apple to cross-pollinate with its ovary, and being, again, two different varieties of apples cross-pollinating with each other. So again, the Honeycrisp apple with a Granny Smith will create Honeycrisp apples, but Honeycrisp pollen with a Honeycrisp ovary does not create fruit. And another example many of us might be familiar with is the Satsuma plum. The Satsuma plum, if you've got that planted in your orchard and there's no other plum varieties in the area, you will not be enjoying Satsuma plums ever, as the pollen from the Satsuma plum does not pollinate the ovary of the Satsuma. And in order to create Satsumas, you need to cross-pollinate now with a different variety of plums, such as the Santa Rosa. The Santa Rosa, on the other hand, just as you mentioned with the Beauty, what is the name of the Beauty?
American Beauty?
So American Beauty is self-fruitful, as is the Santa Rosa, as is the Santa Rosa plum, as is the Granny Smith apple, as is the Red Delicious apple. But the what's another variety that requires cross-pollination?
Haley's Comet.
So Haley's Comet requires cross-pollination with another variety, not another Haley's Comet dragon fruit. It has to be a different variety of dragon fruit where you're getting the pollen of a different variety with the ovary of Haley's Comet will create Haley's Comet dragon fruit to enjoy.
Correct. So an easy way to just do that is American Beauty as an example, our self-fertile variety. We can use that pollen to pollinate the ovaries of Haley's Comet, and then we'll be successful in getting fruit for Haley's Comet.
So share with us, how do you cross-pollinate now your dragon fruit?
So there are a few ways that I'm starting to do it. Like I said, if you're growing many varieties of dragon fruit in your garden, it's very easy to get pollen ready and just have them accessible for you to go ahead and pollinate. A lot of the times when you're growing dragon fruits that are multiple varieties, they tend to bloom at the same time. So you're not too stressed out or gotta, find pollen to pollinate your dragon fruit. So I would just go from flower to flower, you collect it in a bowl, and then just use that mixed pollen to just go ahead and anything that's open, go ahead and pollinate that. Another way is preserving pollen, and there's ways where you can freeze the pollen, save them for up to months, so then that way you can use them at another time if you don't have multiple varieties in your garden already.
That's mind-blowing. I'm so glad you shared the fact you can actually even freeze pollen, and I feel like that's something that's very little shared and educated, that you can actually freeze the pollen. And especially if you're dealing with varieties, that might be blooming one month but not the other month, and you need that pollen to benefit another dragon fruit on your property. So you can collect the pollen, and just to share with you, it's not that crazy. When it comes to even people, there's a process of in vitro fertilization where for about 100 years we've been freezing the sex cells of people, whether it be sperm or egg, and basically saving that for another year or a decade or so, when then the parts are brought together in a petri dish, embryo created and then planted in the uterus, and then from there life begins. So similarly, you can do the same thing with dragon fruit, pollen and fruit as well.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
It's very easy to do. I've actually brought some examples here of what I use to freeze the pollen, and it's as simple as using a medicine jar or any airtight jar that you have. Here I just have some sterile jar. I like to keep things very clean just to not contaminate pollen. You want it to stay viable. And the next important thing about pollen is you got to keep them dry. If you introduce any moisture to it, it will kill the pollen and they won't work anymore. So When I store pollen, I leave them to air dry for 24 hours, put them into my little container here, and then I use these decadent packs, which I put inside to continue to keep any moisture out if needed to, and then freeze it anytime I need it. Once you take it out, it's a one-time use. And once you use it, you have to throw it away because now you're exposing condensation to it.
Got it.
Some moisture might get reintroduced back in here. So use it wisely, or separate them into multiple containers if you know you have a lot of dragon fruit flowers blooming.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's a very helpful tip. I appreciate you sharing that.
No problem.
So the next thing I want to share with is potting dragon fruit. And before we actually demonstrate, and we're going to be taking some of your cuttings that you brought with us and demonstrating potting dragon fruit, but share with us, because I've seen orchards of dragon fruit where all the dragon fruit are in a container, and then I've also seen orchards where the dragon fruit are planted in the ground. What do you recommend and why?
Okay, so I personally grow my dragon fruits all in pots, and the main reason why is because it's just easier for me to move things around if I needed to. Let's say you live in conditions that are just really tough. It gets too hot some days. Like I'm talking about anything over 90 degrees up to 100 degrees. That's the temperature that dragon fruit just don't like. They get sunburned. They get stressed out, and sometimes they just will dehydrate their vines because it's just so hot.
Yeah.
Another one is being too cold. If the dragon fruits are too cold, they can actually freeze because they're filled with water. And if you freeze something and then defrostilate it, it becomes mush, and that's exactly what happens to dragon fruit. And if you have them in containers, it's just easier to move them around, bring them indoors if needed, and also for nutrient purposes. Let's say you're trying to feed a certain one to fruit, like using a bloom fertilizer.
Yeah.
You want one to grow quicker. It's just more obtainable to control them because they're all in their own little house right there.
For sure, it makes sense. You can control the nutrition and feeding and making sure it's doing what you want it to do, whether it be grow or fruit, depending on the type of fertilizer you're giving the plants.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And then advantages for putting them in the ground.
So advantages for putting them in the ground. So let's say you're living in really good weather. We're from Southern California, and the weather is just always nice. We're talking about 75 to 85 year round. Sometimes in the wintertime, it does get a little cold, but still in the 70s. That is ideal because you don't have to move your dragon fruit. You don't have to protect it from the hot rays of the sun. So it just lets the dragon fruit thrive. And when I was talking about pots, and I brought up about nutrients and controlling all that, you're gonna have to amend your soil a little bit more, feeding that, because their soils are kind of root bounded in there and they can't really explore your native soil to find what they need.
Yeah.
Versus if they're in the ground, they just, their roots can spread unlimitedly, finding whatever they need to keep on them growing healthy. And they do grow more vigorously, bigger, because they're just, the world and the sky is the limit for them in there.
That's great.
Yeah.
I know both of us had the pleasure of meeting with Edgar Valdivia. He's a member of the California Rare Fruit Growers, which is an excellent network of over 2,000 people, predominantly throughout California, but also Arizona, Nevada, Texas, and members from all around the world. It's something I recommend you, regardless of where you're at, to check it out, and I'll put the link down below, the CaliforniaRareFruitGrowers.org. And Edgar Valdivia is also known as the leading educator and promoter of dragon fruit of the modern era. And both of us had the honor and the privilege of being in his backyard food forest orchard. And I'm adding forest being his trees are full grown size. His goal was to basically create like a rainforest, environment. And it truly feels like you're in a forest of trees, averaging at least 20 to 40 feet tall. But he enjoys the fruits that are within reach, and the rest is for his surrounding nature and ecology to enjoy. But just such a beautiful Garden of Eden experience, to say the least. And he's got over 100 different varieties of fruit trees to enjoy from all around the world. It's quite an experience. But within his orchard, he also has a lot of dragon fruit. And one of the things he shared, and I just want to plug in what I learned from Edgar Valdivia, is that he also recommends planting in containers for the predominant purpose of pest control. And he says that rodents and rabbits and a lot of these underground critters are predominantly drawn to the root systems of dragon fruit, and he found a lot of success in keeping his dragon fruit in container to predominantly protect the root system of these dragon fruits.
That's right. He did tell me about, Edgar Valdivia speaks about gophers being the main pests that just eat at your roots. He sees that everything is just doing so well on the top, but eventually one day they just drop and die, and he couldn't figure out why. And the gophers were actually getting to his roots, and they were just eating them up, not giving them a chance to grow. So the pots did kind of help, eliminate that, and really put a stop to them just making damage happen.
That's awesome. And I'm proud to share with Edgar, if you take a look here, we sampled together the George's variety from your garden, and you can see he gave me a cutting that was right here. And since then, it's now created 3 new branches. And then this pod over here, we did about 6 months ago with Akita of the Avocados and Citrus Growers of America Facebook group. And he came here with a few other more varieties. But as we said over here, this here is the George's, which is described, even though the exterior or the shell of the dragon fruit is red, how would this be described over here?
It would be considered a white variety because of the flesh. Because there's so many varieties that already have red skin. Saying red dragon fruit, people are just going to be like, well, which one? And that's where we go into variety.
So that's the flaw over here that I wanted to lead to. So this one here is called the George's, which is just, which would be commonly described as a white, but there's hundreds, if not thousands of, I'm sure, white varieties.
Yeah.
One of them being, you said, is the predominant one you'll find at the grocery store, being the
Vietnam whites.
Vietnam whites. So this one here is a white variety named George's, which is a beautiful giant red dragon fruit, again with that white flesh and those black seeds. But this one over here that we got from Gerardo, my gardening friend down in Orange County as well, and he brought these sampling cuttings that are now successfully growing as well. But he received them, he didn't do this himself, but he received them from one of the California Rare Fruit Growers meeting, and they're described as red and purple, and I got this little cutting down here that's described as yellow. Yeah. But that's just a huge general category. We left out the specifics of what are the varieties, and I know even within yellow there's, again, dozens, if not another 100 more varieties, which are going to control the flavor and the sweetness and the yields and the size and the growth rate and all these other factors.
Right. So yeah, once we go into, just classifying them as red, yellow, or just, whatever color they are, it becomes very difficult for us to figure out what is the plan for this cutting. We want to know if this variety is self-fertile, self-sterile, so that way if we need to save pollen and we need to group them with a certain amount of varieties to have fruit successfully, it's better so then we can plan it more accordingly to make it successful for us, and we wouldn't be discouraged.
Fantastic. Well, let's get started with potting. So now we're going to be talking about potting your dragon fruit, and behind me I've got a variety of different potting soils. If you take a look over here, you'll see that I have Amend, which I want to be very clear and specific is not a potting soil. Then I've got this Kellogg's product which says raised bed and potting mix, and then I've got Fox Farm, which it says down below potting soil. Ocean Forest is the variety. And if you can share with us, Richard, what do you recommend and why?
So when I am using soil, you want to use stuff that are, something that doesn't retain too much water. Even though they're cactuses, they do still need to breathe, and using potting soil, something like Ocean Forest Fox Farm, they have stuff called perlite, and there are these white little particles in here that's within the soil, and that just helps space out all of the soil and organic material in there to help water drain a lot better. It's going to keep the soil, pretty moist, but it's going to also drain enough so that way it's not suffocating, and that's something very important to think about. And then we have here just, topsoil and organic soils that we just put mainly on our, beds of our soil. And then if you want to put it on the top of your potting mix, that could work as well. But you're going to want to make sure that it's loose enough so that way water isn't retaining so much in there.
Okay, so I just want to emphasize that if I use a product such as this Amend here that's behind me, which is more of just like a compost blend, but not specifically a potting soil, then I can use it just like in the topsoil to enrich the soil before, maybe between fertilizing, which we're going to get to momentarily, right? Right. So again, for the potting soil, the goal, with perlite is it helps retain water, but it also helps water pass through. Yeah. And something I know you shared with me earlier was in regards to too much water. What does too much water do to your plants?
So when you are watering your dragon fruit too much, it gets to a point where they start to shrink. You would think putting more water would fill them up and get them bigger, yeah. But what it did was it suffocated them. They couldn't breathe. So what they were trying to do was just shut themselves down just to see what was going on. And they got sick and they started to prune up and shrivel, and they got really thin. And what my thought was, well, they need more water. So I kept on watering, and they just got more and more sick. So after I, kind of just let them be and just let the soil dry up, they started to get better.
Okay.
So this is where, you know, really good soil that's quality, does the job for you, really helps so that you don't have to guesswork what's going on and go through that.
And your favorite potting mix that you've been using for the last like few years?
Fox Farm Ocean Forest. It's all of my dragon fruit pots has that amendment in there.
Okay, so Fox Farm Ocean Forest, let's go and prepare the pot.
Okay.
So before we fill up the container with soil, what size containers do you recommend? What type of containers do you recommend? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I've used 20-gallon pots for all of my dragon fruits with 4 cuttings in them. You can use a variety of 15 to 20 gallons. I think that's good enough size for the dragon fruits to live in there forever. I've been growing them in pots for about 3 to 4 years now and have had no problem. They fruit perfectly. I get high yields and the fruits actually come out pretty decently big size. So if you're worried about small fruits growing in pots, that's not going to be the case with this. So 20-gallon is what I recommend.
So this one here is about how large?
This is a 20-gallon pot.
So this is 20 gallons. I'm assuming this one here behind would then be 15?
15. It looks about like a 15.
And then just next to that, the one that we got from Edgar Valdivia, the Georges, is probably in a 1 to 2 gallon right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get to filling. And again, your recommendation for growing up to 4 cuttings is a 20 gallon size.
Correct.
Let's fill that up.
All right.
Okay. So now that we got our 20 gallon container filled with the Fox Farm Ocean Forest potting mix, what's the next step?
All right. So the next step is just looking at your cuttings, making sure everything's callous. And I've cut this, a couple days ago to let them kind of dry out. I'm just going to show you guys what it looks like when they're callous. This is what I'm talking about. You don't want any too much green. Kind of see the skin is shriveling up and there is a hard layer forming. So once you see that, you're good to go and go ahead and plant your dragon fruit.
So I want to add, when I do a cutting off of roses or whatever else, sometimes a race to get them in water.
Yeah.
Are you cutting them and then storing them in a bucket of water before you plant them, or you just leaving it out to dry?
Just leaving them out to dry. So you don't want anything wet because it's not going to give it the chance to callus. And the whole point of it is to just air dry things to get it to harden up. So that way when you put it in here, it's nice and sealed and there's no open wetness for it to introduce bacteria and for it to ruin your cuttings.
Excellent. I'm glad we emphasized that. And then again, how many days on average would you recommend for the callus and the drying to happen?
So I've had, really good success with just leaving it out from 2 to 3 days. And again, it could vary in your conditions. If it's cooler in your climate, it's gonna take a little bit longer. It's been really hot and dry here in California, so it only took me about 2 to 3 days. If you're talking about cooler climates, I would wait up to at least 5 to 7 days.
Okay.
And again, just taking a look at it, inspect it, see all of the signs that it's ready, and then you're ready to go.
Okay, so I was really excited when I took a bite into the yellow dragon fruit, as I said at the start of this video, and now I'm like hooked. And I want to dedicate a lot of my real estate, integrating a lot of the pots as well within my landscape as well. And what varieties of yellow dragon fruit did you bring in? If you can share a little bit about what those varieties of yellow have to offer.
Okay, so there are 2 Ecuador Pelora dragon fruit variety that I have here. They're the same but slightly different, and that's the variety that you tried in the store, the very sweet honey flavored tasting one.
Okay.
So this one here is the Ecuador Pelora. This one was taken off from the fruits that I bought in the store. I grafted that little green stem onto a mature rootstock, something like this, and it produced me this huge branch here. So
That's
I
fantastic.
know this is gonna give me identical fruit, the one I've tasted already from the store.
From the store.
And this was a grafted from a fruit. This here is the same. It's an Ecuador Pelora, but I grew it from a seed. So I propagated this from a seed and then I grafted it onto a mature rootstock to get the seed to grow quicker into a mature cutting.
Got it.
So same, but then we can have a little slight variation difference because...
Of course, it's not genetically identical.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
And then we have something else called Peruvian yellow. They're same flavor, really sweet. It's just the shape is a little different. We're talking about a yellow dragon fruit that's more oblong versus very round, like the Ecuador Pelora here.
Okay.
And we have one that's totally different. Flavor profile is totally different. This is called Isis Yellow. This one is a very smooth, like the red dragon fruit, the red dragon fruit skin with the white flesh. Imagine that, but with yellow skin. So it's gonna look just like that, yellow skin. It has a lemon tarty taste to it. So I would say a really sweet, refreshing lemonade flavor from this one. Not
Fantastic.
your honey one like this one, more contrast with this one, Isis Yellow.
Love that.
Yeah.
So if you want to come in and take a look at the spelling of all of these, so when you're looking for them, Isis Yellow, Ecuador Pelora,
And Peruvian Yellow.
and the Peruvian Yellow. So exciting. Well, let's get to planting them.
Okay. So some things about planting cuttings is, I know it's very easy if you just want to stick the whole cutting in there until it just starts to stand up like that. That's okay, but now you're just compromising too much flesh being in there, and you're just giving it a chance to rot this, and then it's just gonna get bacterial growth and then ruin your whole cutting. My recommendation is get a stick if you have one.
Okay.
A stick,
I'll get you one.
yeah, we have a stick.
Do you want me to get one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Get a stick. We're gonna put it in about 1 inch, and 1 inch is all about you need, because this bottom layer here is what's gonna produce you the roots, and they're gonna be coming out of the inside of the camion layer. So 1 inch is all you're gonna need. So we're gonna wait for Charles to bring me back a stick. We're gonna go ahead and stick this in about 1 inch deep from the base here, and then that'll be it. We're gonna water and let it grow some roots.
Okay, so I just got you a stake. What do you recommend? What do we do from here?
Okay, so normally you would just want to put this at the center of your pot here, and if you can, and if you are planning to grow it in this pot and you have a permanent spot for it, we want to use a bigger post that's going to last longer and go through all the tough conditions like rain, sun damage. So something like a 4x4 post would be ideal.
Okay.
But because Charles is going to be taking this and then putting it to an existing garden area that
Yes.
already has the 4x4 post,
I do.
we're not too worried about the post right now. We just wanted to help root, train it to grow a certain height that we're comfortable putting over there, and then just let them go. So what I do is I'm gonna be taking these cuttings, and like I said before, we're gonna go ahead and only put about 1 inch down. They're not gonna produce roots on any of these areas here. They're gonna be producing roots at the very bottom of the base, and 1 inch is all you need. Anything lower than that, you're gonna be risking chances of root rot.
So before we anchor it in and tie it all up, I've got rooting powder, I've got cinnamon powder, I've got some honey, and I know these are all different ways of encouraging root, stimulating root. Do you practice with any of these, rooting stimulants?
And yeah, I don't do too much of all that, because dragon fruits are really hardy plants, right? And like I said, you can leave them outside in the shade and they will grow
They'll still grow
naturally. So I know if I put it in here,
It's gonna work.
they're gonna work eventually. And it's all about season for these kind of plants. Once you're hitting the spring to summer season, they wake up because they go hibernating in the wintertime, and
Yep.
they see no growth happens. You just see them get really thick and fat.
Yep.
And that's why, dragon fruit cuttings in the wintertime is ideal to be bought, because they're just more healthy that way.
For sure.
When you're buying them in the summertime, they come a little thinner because, the sun, and they're just more worried about producing fruits.
Got it.
So yeah, that's about it for planting the cuttings. And you just want to align them, facing the backside. There's going to be, I would say, 3 sides.
Yeah,
there's
there is.
3 sides to the dragon fruit. You're going to have this one where the fin kind of sticks out, and there's a flat side right here. You're always going to want to put that flat side against the post, and then you're going to want to tie them as well.
Here we go. So I've got some twine.
We got some twine. Here we go. We're just going to tie them. And our goal here is just to keep them upright, because you don't want them to wiggle so much, and that's what's going to encourage them to start growing roots. Once they're still, they know they don't have to do anything else, and they have a permanent home to go ahead and establish some roots. So you want to tie them close to the post as possible. Try not to break the delicate vines that's on here, because if you tie a little too hard, it can break them. But not to worry, even though you break them, they will still grow.
Yeah.
So when planting these cuttings, you're going to want to go about 1 inch deep, maybe 3/4 of an inch is ideal. Not too much in, because again, if you're going to be putting too much of this flesh in, they don't grow from the sides. It all happens at the bottom base, and you just want enough soil in there just to keep them in that climate controlled, where they just feel like, okay, this is a good area for me to root, so they're just going to go ahead and start producing them.
Got it.
So that's what I did. I stuck it in about 3/4 of an inch to about 1 inch. We're tying them with some twine, and there's about 3 cuttings in here first, and these were just fresh cuttings. And then if you want to pot something like this, which is already established in a 1-gallon pot, you're going to do the same thing. You just want to dig a hole.
Here, I'll help you with that.
Yeah. So while Charles is doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take out this cutting, and what I do is I just loosely move the pot around, get all of that soil to break up, because if you don't want to pull it out and the roots are stuck on the side, they can break and damage them. I kind of put my hand here and just let it come out just like that. And here we have a really nice root ball.
Here, let's show off the roots.
So as you can see, they're just all growing the base. And I can even give you guys an example of where the roots are growing. So you can see here,
Wow.
they don't grow on the sides at all. It happens at the very base of them. And once it does happen, they just start to be very vigorous with the root growth.
Another good observation is you can see that the parts that did go under the ground, and that's the reason maybe for not going so deep.
Correct.
But the deeper you go, you can actually see the rotting that's happening against the flesh of the plant.
Yeah, so that yellow here is just being in the soil that's wet for a little bit too long. And what we can do to help this is now just plant it a little bit up.
Elevate it, yeah.
Elevate it up, and then just fix that by just planting
Let me
this.
backfill that a little bit more then.
So we're gonna go about soil level.
So that close. I thought you'd like hug the rim.
Oh yeah, because roots, these dragon fruit roots don't grow down. They kind of grow outwards. So if you saw me hold that root ball earlier, it was very close and spreading this way.
Okay.
They're gonna fill up this whole pot around here. You would think they have trouble rooting next to each other, but they figure it out and they just really take whatever they can. Whoever grows first will get it all. And with 20-gallon, 4 cuttings will be no problem with, you know, fighting for root space, growth. Everything will still grow very nicely and evenly.
And I just want to emphasize these 3 cuttings that we discussed at the beginning are all genetic identical clones to the parent plant that you took them from.
Yes.
This one over here that came with the roots that we just planted is, it says on here, the Ecuador Pelora, but this was generated from the seed of the fruit. So kind of like our children, they're not genetically identical to the parent.
Correct.
But it's hopefully going to be something similar, and we're going to get to experiment with the flavor soon.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Yes. All right, guys, so after putting in the cuttings, you have everything nicely situated. You've tied them with some twine or gardening tape. Your soil is going to be kind of moist, but not moist enough for them to want to be happy to root. So what I do after I put all of the soil, get all of the cuttings situated, is just lightly water. Because they have no roots yet, you don't want too much water. And then again, I said if there's too much water, you saw what happened to that other one.
Rotting.
It kind of starts to rot. So what I want to do is just get the base of our soil here pretty nicely moist. So I would say about 20 seconds of watering on a shower setting would be ideal. You just want the top.
So you're not soaking the entire pot.
I'm not soaking the entire pot.
If I were planting any other fruit tree, I would want to soak the entire container.
Exactly.
And I might even put a saucer to collect the water for that day and then allow it to dry thereafter. But you're saying less is more.
Less is more. And like, that's why they're so cool, because, you know, they're so easy to grow. They have so much water stored in their branches already that's enough energies to reserve for them to just last without the water.
Got it.
And like I said, I left them out without no water, no soil, and they were still producing roots. So you know that they can do it all on their own. You're just giving them the right ideal conditions to help them do it better.
That's awesome. How about fertilizer?
Fertilizer. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So if you're using, you know, quality soil like Fox Farm Ocean Forest, they have bat guano, fish fertilizer, and earthworm casting in there already.
Yep.
And to fertilize, you don't need anything for the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
And about that time, that's when all of the soil will start breaking down and then make it accessible for the roots to absorb.
Got it.
When I start to fertilize this, I just keep an eye on them. If you're a crazy gardener guy like me, I go and look at my dragon fruits every day. I'm pretty sure you can share the same thing. So
with all my other fruit trees, yeah.
So you will notice if you're looking daily, if the growth is starting to slow down. That's a great idea when to incorporate some fertilizer, because you're like, hey, you were growing about, you know, half an inch every other day, and why are you starting to slow down now?
Sure.
It's just because now they have no more food into their soil, and you just want to start fertilizing and keep on pushing it and extend your season.
So I know with container gardening in general for other fruit trees, and I don't know if you want to add specifically with dragon fruit, but with your fruit trees during the growing season, I like to feed my trees the first week of every single month, because I know with every watering, those minerals are leaching out of the container. What's your advice?
That is great, because we are growing in pots. They're not being recollected back into the soil for our dragon fruits roots to reclaim all that. It's actually being wasted and pushed out. So yeah, you're gonna have to water and fertilize every 7 to 10 days. I would say that would be a good time frame once you get them in.
Okay.
Get some fertilizer in here. But yeah, in pots you're gonna need to really extend all of that and push your season to this maximum, because you don't want to not fertilize, and in the wintertime they're not growing, so there's no point of fertilizing. So, you know, take advantage of the growing season, let them grow as fast as they can by giving them a little bit of push with fertilizer.
Sounds good. So when it comes to feeding your plants, and again, I haven't fed my plants since I propagated these about 6 months ago. All the growth is happening now that we're in the middle of summer. These things are growing like crazy. I brought you here to my house at the right time to hopefully enjoy some good growth this year, so that hopefully we're going to be enjoying fruit as early as how soon?
Well, if you're growing from a mature cutting, you can get fruits within a year. I've grown some dragon fruits where the cuttings have been so mature that I've got them within 8 months. Flowering.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other cool thing is once they flower, how fast can we enjoy fruit?
Oh, so once the flower opens, it takes about 30 days to 40 days for the fruit to completely finish ripening.
So keep this in mind. When it comes to tomatoes, it takes at least 60 for most varieties, sometimes 90 days from the flower to turn into a fruit.
Right.
But dragon fruit, from flower to fruit, 30 days.
30 to 40 days.
That's fantastic.
Depending on which varieties you have, some ripens quicker, some takes a little bit longer.
So it's one of the fastest ripening fruits you can possibly get your hands on. They're expensive relative to pretty much any other fruits you can buy.
Right.
They're delicious and nutritious and antioxidant rich and so much value.
Right, and they don't only flower once, they go through multiple cycles of fruiting.
And that's another huge
You
plus.
can get 2 to 3 waves of fruits coming through your whole 3 months of summer. And that's awesome because you know how expensive dragon fruit can be. And imagine you can have them all summer, which is the best time to eat them chilled.
That's
Amazing.
fantastic. So like imagine like your peach tree, you're only enjoying one harvest per year, or your apple tree, one harvest per year.
Yeah.
But with dragon fruit, you're saying I can harvest dragon fruit at 3 different times throughout the year.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. So cool. Well, I want to make sure I feed them and get them off to a great start. And so what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to be using the Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizer. This here, the Super Blend, has a high NPK percentage, but the fertilizers, unlike most fertilizers, also include all the macronutrients plants need, which include calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. So we got the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the NPK that you'll find in pretty much all fertilizers, but it also has calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, which is all of the macronutrients plants need. You can Google it and basically write plant macronutrients and you'll see that there's 6, but almost all the fertilizers on the market only focus on 3. And that is the birth of the Ivory Organics all-purpose fertilizers, to make sure the plants have everything they need to succeed, both in growth and in flower and root development, root disease resistance. Calcium's in the cell walls of all the plants, magnesium's in the chlorophyll molecule, and then sulfur is an important element towards the greening of the plant too. So, and important in the metabolic processes of the plant. So it's got all that the plant is going to need. We're simply going to sprinkle this granular, which you can also use as a tablespoon per gallon of water if you want to use it as a foliar feed or as a liquid fertilizer, which I know you've done as well in a lot of your videos. But I'm just going to sprinkle this here on the top. So I just put about 3 tablespoons, and I'm going to be doing this every single month now during the growing season. And once we water it, the nutrients are going to end up, feeding the soil. Also, being an organic fertilizer, it's going to improve the whole soil biology within the container. It's feeding the earthworms, it's feeding the beneficial bacteria, it's feeding the mycorrhiza, symbiotic relationship with the roots, and just benefiting the whole soil environment, not just feeding the plants. The other thing too you may have noticed is that the plants here have been whitewashed. I told you earlier that these 2 containers were hiding under the canopy of my 10-in-1 fig tree. And you can take a look here on Edgar Valdivia's cutting that I've whitewashed the lower part of the tree trunk. I always teach whitewashing the heart of the tree, being the tree trunk and lower branches, so that those don't get burnt. Have you ever experienced sunburn on dragon fruit?
Oh, definitely. Dragon fruit can only take so much sun, and if they're exposed to sun at 90 to 95 degrees for a prolonged of 3 days, you will see them start to yellow and sometimes even burn so hard that they just start to turn to mush and rot.
Okay.
So yes, sunburn does happen on dragon fruit.
So I know whitewashing is a concept that's been, discussed for and applied in the agricultural setting for thousands of years, since BC times. And I know for the last 100 years, especially here in America, a lot of people have been resorting to using paint. And for the organic gardener, whatever you put on your plants is going to end up in your soil within about a year or 2. As the plants grow, it's going to shed whatever you put on it, and then you're going to end up with paint that's designed to last 100 years now in your soil for 100 years. Yeah. And so what Ivory Organics has done is we've got the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard, which offers protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents. And you can use it on your roses, fruit, nut trees, ornamental trees, and shrubs. And it's for use in organic production, healthier than latex paint or tar-based products. As you can see, it's OMRI listed for organic use. And we're simply I've added a little bit less water to this. It basically comes in a powder form. You can add the amount of water you want to create a product that will be more of a tree paste or a brush on formula, or you can even dilute it to create up to 22 or 25 ready to use spray bottles. Then if you take a look real quick on the foliage, and I'll spray one more time, but you can see right now that it's dry. You can see that it's got like, dry milk, residues, but it's basically serving as a sunscreen protection. But here I'm gonna spray it, and you can see it basically applies as if it were milk, but it's offering the plant now a total sunscreen protection on the stem and everything, still allowing light to penetrate. These are the leaves of the dragon fruit, so photosynthesis is important, to allow light to penetrate, but at the same time we're battling also the risk of sunburn damage, being we brought it out from a shady place, and now it's going to be in a full sun area to capitalize on maximum sugars, maximum vitamins and nutrients, and all the benefits that it gets from being in a full sunlit place. And also, as we discussed, as you shared earlier, so it doesn't also grow leggy. We want to make sure that it has girth and stability to support hopefully many years of fruit to come.
Exactly. And that's really important. Like if you're expecting a heat wave coming, this would be something really good to prepare your dragon fruit to push through those days, because once you get all of that growth grown, it's so easy to lose it within just a really hot day. So having tools like this to use is really great.
Fantastic. If you're not looking for a white look for whitewashing your plants, you can also go with colors green. There's also a color brown if you're looking for something that's more aesthetically, and less noticeable when whitewashing your plants in color white. You can also whitewash in colors, again, green or brown, as you can see over here. And I'll actually apply a little bit more. You can see that the color green is more in line with the color of the dragon fruit. And I've just gone only about halfway up, as I don't want to block also the photosynthesis that's going on within the plant. So I've only protected the trunk, as I like defining it, the heart of the plant. If the rest of the upper part of the plant burns, at least the heart of the plant has been protected. So I just wanted to share that there's other color choices available. And if there isn't any pest issues, you can also go with the whitewash formula, which is an oil-free line of the Ivory Organics products. Another thing I want to share with you in regards to protecting your plants, and one of the #1 pest issues I was experiencing was with snails and slugs, which I welcome in my organic garden, as they help break down and decompose all the organic matter, returning all the elements back into the soil. But every time these guys were pushing a little bit of growth, I found out, and for me it's not so much snails as it is slugs, but the slugs seem to be eating it about as fast as it was growing.
Right.
What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, with slugs, it's really, I would say, painful to come out. You're so excited to see new growth in your dragon fruit, and then the next day you come out, half of it is almost gone.
For sure.
I've never personally have a problem, and if I do, I'm like I said, I'm out in my garden a lot, and at nighttime I know that's when they like to come out and eat stuff, and I would just go inspect all my dragon fruit, and I see it, and I just gently take them off and then discard them somewhere else.
So in my garden there's thousands of slugs, not just one or two, and I would never be able to pick how many that there are that usually come out in the evening hours. But I just want to share with you that the products, again, the Ivory Organics, here on the back, you can take a look on the ingredients, includes diatomaceous earth, which helps also protect the plant from pests such as snails and slugs. It's also in the ready-to-use spray is a diatomaceous earth, so when you spray it on the leaves, it will better help repel the pest. But I wanted to share a couple other products, being this product by Sluggo. It's also OMRI listed for organic use, and this one over here, which is Sluggo Plus, the plus being that it also adds spinosad, which is a second way of giving these pests that are in the vicinity of the plants a stomach ache, and just basically getting them out of your garden. I only apply the product sparingly, and I know I've got to enjoy all of this new growth that's happened again in just the last 30 days because I got the snails away from the plants by just broadcasting a little bit of this product. You can see what it looks like here. But that much is all I would need to sprinkle in just this top layer of soil. And when the slugs come to visit, they basically disperse and stay away from the plant and don't get into the new vegetative growth on the plant. And that's kind of done the trick. But I don't broadcast the product all over my garden, as I don't want all the snails and slugs off my property gone, as there is value for those pests, even though they're beneficial in your garden.
Right, and new growth is the slug's favorite treat. If you ever have dragon fruit, new growth, it will be the first thing they go towards too. So you might not even need to use it anywhere. You just have to put it on your dragon fruit and you're good to go.
So, Richard, do you happen to sell dragon fruit cuttings, or rooted dragon fruit to, people that are interested in incorporating dragon fruits into their garden?
So I do. I'm currently working on a website. It's going to be called graftingdragonfruits.com, and I'm currently working on just getting the verbiage and all the pictures out there so you guys can see what variety they are, what variety you're buying, all of the genes that they come from, self-fertile, and if they're easy to grow. So that's going to be releasing hopefully within the next month. But for now, you can just send me a direct message on Instagram, or if you can contact me through Facebook Messenger. I'm more than happy to get in contact with you guys to help you guys get all of these awesome varieties of dragon fruits out there so you can grow them yourself in your garden.
So looking forward. So aside from finding Richard on Grafting Dragon Fruits YouTube, the other places they can also find you are where?
You can find me on Instagram at Grafting Dragon Fruit, and my Facebook group called Grafting Dragon Fruit as well. There's about 9,000 members in there now. They're very active. If I can't help you,
someone will.
Have been very helpful in that group, and they've been going through all the same, problems that you stumble upon growing dragon fruit, and they're more than happy to help you guys in there.
That's fantastic.
To you guys. Yeah.
What another nice network, approaching 10,000 just on Facebook alone.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put all of those links to make it convenient for you. You're going to find it right below this video, as well as in the description below. And follow those links, follow Richard, get in touch with them, find the varieties that you want. Hopefully Richard can accommodate your request. And also with timing, when is the best time to get your hands on dragon fruit?
Oh, so I really recommend growing dragon fruit now. So today is, what is it?
Well, and that's the first week of August.
First week of August, and I would say start even sooner than that. The moment that you start to see flowers blooming, which is spring, that's when dragon fruits are waking up and starting to grow.
Yeah.
So you have all the way from May all until November to grow dragon fruit.
So pretty much spring, summer, early fall.
Correct.
And the growing zone is predominantly like southern United States, the warmer parts of the country.
Exactly.
Okay. So Richard, I brought a gift, our Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard Trio, which includes the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard, the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 ready-to-use spray bottle. I've got a bag of the all-purpose fertilizer, and I'm also giving you a signed copy of Saving the World with the Home Garden. Improve our planet's health with natural gardening lessons. You can find it on Amazon, as well as 8 other countries that Amazon is making it available. And just want to thank you so very much for visiting me here in the home garden. And if you've enjoyed this educational lesson brought to you by Richard Lee of Grafting Dragon Fruit, be sure to give us a thumbs up and share it with your gardening friends and your gardening family, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe and hit the push bell notification to stay connected to all of these educational lessons as soon as they become made available. And I'm putting that link again in the bottom corner, the bottom description of this video, as well as the comment, to make it convenient to get connected to Richard Lee and Grafting Dragon Fruits, and hoping all of you take that first step in incorporating dragon fruits into your home garden. As always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.